spaceship wasn't gonna land in time for a minute.
Say that again. It kind of said reporting in progress. I missed
Yeah,
what you said.
I said I thought my spaceship wasn't gonna land in time.
Uh, I see.
So
So,
let me just update something really quick for myself. And we still got time, 2 minutes to get started, right?
yeah, we got some attendees
Sounds good.
here. I'm excited because we got some great news for everybody.
Yeah, I'm actually kind of excited too.
Yeah,
Yeah, I want to kind of I'm actually in a weird way, Jeremy, looking most forward to recapping kind of like, the last couple months and what we've learned and where we've been. And then,
definitely.
so maybe we can spend like, 30 minutes in the past, 30 minutes in the future, and then 30 minutes we can even open it up to everybody else if they have questions. And if anybody wants to jump in and ask questions while we're going, I think
Yeah,
that's going to be great too.
definitely.
So,
Yeah, I'm really looking forward to this because we definitely learned a lot related to live events, webinars, and we're going to continue to learn a lot going forward with our newer approach. And I think everyone watching this too will there'll be a lot of eye openers on our based on our conversation today. All right, so we'll go ahead and start in about a minute. Nice shirt, by the way.
oh yeah.
Vibrant.
So I was like trying to I was deliberating which shirt I should wear. So I was like looking at all my shirts, and this particular shirt is always a conversation starter. And
Of course. Yeah.
since today we were exploring possibilities and conversations, I was like, you know what, I'll wear it. Because to some people they think it's limes, and then to other people it's melons. And then I think the consensus, when we might have to take a straw poll at the end of this, when it comes to
Yeah.
branding, is it beneficial if your brand isn't always clear? Because then it can be intriguing.
Yeah.
Lime isn't, I don't know. Anyways, looks more like a melon.
I kind of got kiwi from that, but I could see lime for sure.
So, hey, do you want to hey Jeremy, we can still like if somebody's attending, and because I know like some people have gotten accustomed to our marketing Q&A town hall.
Yeah.
So, in the spirit of our original webinar slash town halls, I'll still take questions. So if there's anyone that's like, hey, I'm enjoying what you guys are talking about, but based on previous town halls, I had a question and I want to jump on and ask a question. I still want to honor, our old town hall. And maybe why don't we
Yeah.
start with that? Why don't you just tell people about the old town hall and the rules of engagement, and then we'll share like what we've always done on the show and
Yep.
the webinar. And then, we'll go from there, and we'll just kind of put it together and see if we can keep this exciting and flowing. And again, if there are any attendees or people listening or anyone joins later, you can just remind them that we'll still take the Q&As. If they have a
Yeah.
project, we can do a sidebar, but we got like 90 minutes, so we're here.
Exactly.
We can
Yeah.
have fun. We can have fun today. I'm
Yeah.
actually excited. So go ahead, get started.
Yeah. Let's get started. Everybody, welcome to the November marketing Q&A town hall. This is a monthly webinar that Mar Studio hosts each month for everyone needing to improve their marketing, improve their sales understanding, ads, branding, of course, as well. Chevy specifically specializes in the marketing side of things. His partner Sam specializes in branding. Today's town hall, we have a lot of new developments. It's going to be a little bit different in terms of style. We're going to share some insights we've learned in the past couple months related to live events, and we're going to share also our future, what we're going to do in the future too. I'm your host, Jeremy Duth. I'm the CEO of Synergy Reach, a lead generation um, agency. And before I turn it over to Chevy and we get started in our conversation, because I know you guys are excited for that, I'd like to kind of talk about some quick rules. And if you're new here, um, you can know how we kind of run things usually. Everyone is an attendee, and you can ask your questions utilizing the Q&A chat at the bottom with the question mark. You just click that, and then you can type your question in, and we can answer it live for you. Um, If you want to come on video, you can. All you have to do is just raise your hand and we'll bring you on as a panelist and you can be on video and we can talk on video. We've had that with a good amount of people in the past. We ask that you try to keep things pretty brief and to the point in terms of your question within about 30 seconds. We don't want things too long-winded. If you have follow-up questions, though, definitely feel free to ask them because we always welcome it on these webinars. Now, I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Chevy. Chevy, we'd love to hear an introduction about you in Mars Studio, and then we can get into it.
Yeah, sounds good. Let me see if I can change something here.
Sure.
Okay. You guys are seeing me when I'm talking, right? Everything's good
Yep.
on your end. Okay, perfect. So yeah, I don't want to waste too much time talking about me, but for those that don't know me, I think it's good to give some context. I just updated my title. I don't know if it's saying Chevy S still, Jeremy, or does it give my full title now?
It's still saying it on the main screen,
Yeah,
but
it's
on
okay.
the
Don't worry about it. I
yeah.
won't. I won't waste time. So I'm the senior chief marketing officer at Mars Studio. My role with clients is as the chief marketing officer to help them come up with the strategy, the vision. Really understand the resources, the level of effort, scope of work that goes into the project, and really, make sure that we can identify the needs and then the appropriate solution to those needs, scale it, build it, identify gaps, client acquisition, all sorts of other kind of considerations. So I've been blessed with the opportunity over the last several decades to touch all facets of projects, in all levels of industries from B2C, B2G, B2B, mom and pop, Fortune 100, $1 billion projects, $1,000 projects, so it really has run the gamut, and it's about scaling and scoping and understanding how to make things fit based on your budget. And people ask me this all the time, what's an appropriate marketing budget, and my number one answer is a sustainable one. So there's kind of like who I am as a CMO, touching like all the different facets. And typically on these webinars, what we do is we bring in our invited guests, our captive audience, I like to call them. We do open it up to the public; they can register and come in. And then when you're on the webinar, you can engage and ask questions. It's a completely open marketing Q&A town hall. We try to make it as open and inviting as possible, so you can be anonymous in your Q&A submission. You can ask your question, you can give as much background, you can actually join live on cam and have a little dialogue, where we'll see if we can get to that today. But yeah, we have an evolution that's happening today, which I'm excited about, and we want to share why we're doing that and how we're doing that and the purpose behind doing that, and maybe you can learn a little bit about target audiences and how what it means to have a target audience and how you brand around them and how you try to create channels and mediums to reach them. But yeah, we can definitely revisit where we've been. And while we're revisiting where we've been, if that intrigues any of you to be like, I have a question about my business, and it can be any topic really. So don't be bashful, don't be shy. Throw up your Q&A questions in there. If there's a subject matter you want us to kind of cover broadly, generally, you have a branding question, you have a budget question, you have a website question, you have a social media marketing question, you have a pay-per-click question. It doesn't matter if it's marketing, communication, business. Ask it, and we'll see if we can get to it, and maybe we can even wrap it into the context of our conversation and how we're going from what we're going to call our, and this is going to be the first little teaser as far as what we're going to talk about today, our legacy webinar. We're giving up our legacy webinar, a captive audience webinar, for a future, more of a brand awareness streaming platform. And we're making this transition going into 2025. So yeah, that's kind of like what we want to talk about. So this is, believe it or not, our final town hall. Not really. It's our final webinar town hall, because we're just going to be on another mechanism, and we're going to have the opportunity to engage maybe a broader audience and happy people can have more opportunities to ask questions. All right. And Jeremy, I'm going to leave it to you to like, again, host and, throw in those Q&A questions as they come in
For
if
sure.
things
Yeah.
come in.
We actually
Otherwise, yeah.
we actually just have one right now. And it's from Aline. They say, how do you scale a SaaS bot on social media handles or discuss in any innovative way? Um, Aline, could you clarify what you mean by that? Not sure if
I
I'm
think
reading
I
this.
understand the question as it's phrased. I'll take a stab at it, Jeremy.
Okay.
Um, and then if they want to add additional clarification, they can add additional clarification, and we can go from there.
Sounds
So
good.
I think it was how do you scale a SaaS bot? On and then talking about social media handles. So I'm also assuming like they want to market a bot that they've created using social media.
Oh,
Um,
right. Yep.
right. So that's what my takeaway is. So I'm going to start with the basics here and the due diligence that you should do. So if you've created a bot, the question becomes who's your target audience? And how are they going to use that bot? And what is the cost of selling that bot to that individual? Is it a bot that they purchase like one time and they get like a lifetime access to that bot based on a simple fee? Or is it something that has like a lifespan like a couple months? Or is it something that's monthly and indefinite where you can determine lifetime value, or annual value? I like if it has a lifetime value, it's going to be hard to determine initial lifetime value of a potential client. So I would start with maybe just the annual value. I mean, if it's a one and done sales service, then what is the value of that sales service? So, and then what you're trying to do, and I can go into it a little bit, as far as client acquisition costs, but I don't want to get away from your actual question. But ultimately, you're trying to figure out, what is the cost of acquiring a client, and what are you then going to spend? And that would determine what you should spend and which channels and mediums you should be on social media. But it's also gonna, by doing your due diligence on identifying the avatar and who the audience segment group is, you'll be able to identify where you should reach them. So, for example, if your bot is a tool that makes it easier for moms to remember, feeding their kids or the nutritional supplements for their children, you might not want to have, promote your bot on LinkedIn. But if it's a tool for businesses, you might not want to promote it on Facebook. On the other hand, you might want to, because your target audience resides on Facebook. I'm a CEO, I'm a CMO. I'm on Facebook, but why am I on Facebook? And if your product, you're trying to reach me, you might want to be on Facebook to try to reach me, whether it's for business or whether it's for pleasure. The question is, where does your avatar reside? So
Yeah.
again, all of this really goes back to understanding your target audience and identifying what that cost is in order to be able to determine what your startup budget should be. And then it doesn't matter whether you're investing $250 a month or whether you're investing $2,500 a month or $25,000 a month, because at that point it's, I'm spending X to get Y, and I'm spending X to acquire a client, which is Y. And then that's going to leave me a sale, which is an annual sale or individual sale. And then that's going to give me a certain profit margin. And I'm going to be able to reinvest a portion of that profit to do this process over and over and over again. So once you figure out the formula, then it doesn't matter if you're spending 250, 2,500 or 25,000. It's just a matter of economics and scaling once you've identified the proper channels. Was there a follow-up, Jeremy, that ever
Yeah.
came in?
Yeah. So they followed up with, it's an outreach software on TikTok Shop. Target audience is brand owners, brand managers, which I think he means VAs. And the price cost ranges from $100 to $1,000 for agencies. So it seems like his three target avatars. for this one.
Yeah, so this is where I would want to know the individual's background. Like, it sounds like they know some marketing and some stuff, or are they just really savvy and as an entrepreneur and someone who's created the technology, just under due diligence? Because
Mhm.
now you're getting into some of the nuances where you want someone who speaks the language, who deals with that all the time to help you manage it. The it doesn't appear that the initial cost of entry is significant. It doesn't seem to be a barrier, but if you don't have any money, right, and you're a startup company, then it can be a significant cost. And that's where again you it makes more sense to take your time, do your due diligence, and do your calculations in order to determine, okay, you're on this TikTok channel, you've identified a target audience, you're going to spend X. So how long are you going to spend X? Where are you going to get the money from, right? And then spend it. So essentially now you're looking at creating a marketing budget. When you spend that marketing budget, what's the KPI? What's the cost? Now here's the other thing. Here's the one thing I'll caution you about. Don't think that you're going to do any type of advertising, even social, especially social media, where you're going to go in and, whether you're spending $100 or $1,000 to get in the door, including your ad buy, and make sure you're asking the right questions, because there might be a service fee and then there might be an ad buy fee. But it's not going to be like, I'm going to do it for 1 month and then I'm going to be able to figure out if it worked or not. A lot of companies are going to try
Yeah.
to sell you on 6 months, so sticking through it. I would say for yourself, be ready to at least commit to 3 months of an engagement so that you can get it implemented, get it running smoothly, work out the kinks, there's a lot of automation that runs with a lot of advertising these days with TikTok and Facebook and these other entities. So you need to let the algorithm run, and when you keep making changes to it or you don't let it run long enough, you're not gonna get the connectivity that you need. So what you should do and whether you should do it and if it's a good idea is one question for the entrepreneur, the boss, the owner of the company. But then the next question is, do you have the resources to do it correctly? It's one thing to go to Home Depot and buy the material to do the plumbing project or to do the hardscape project. Or the drywall project. It's a
Mhm.
whole nother thing to have the skills to do it well and not let that material go to waste. So be careful. It's not just a plug and play. There is a lot of nuances that go into it. And as a CMO, I constantly advise my clients, and I'm not telling you, whoever this person is, to hire me. But if this is something you want to do and it's the only thing you want to do, my suggestion is find subject matter experts in that space who only do that, right? Do TikTok advertising. Schedule a consultation with them, reach out to them, learn as much as you can before initiating. And then if you can find someone that's reasonable and you've talked to enough people where you find them to be a subject matter expert, what you can then do is engage them to do it for you. Now, if you have resources, if you have the budget, you're actually a bona fide company, you have the bandwidth, maybe engaging someone of my caliber, a CMO quality person who could not only look at this campaign for you, but also help you understand how this campaign would integrate and articulate into all the other components of your business, your brand message, your brand identity, sales and marketing assets, your website, and so forth and so on. Because, okay, I get the lead now. How do I nurture them? How do I convert them? How do I manage them? Those are a lot of other questions that you should be asking when you're starting a campaign. It doesn't matter what the campaign is. If you're a mom and pop, you're doing it from your home, you're just starting out, okay, an Excel sheet, but how are you going to manage it, right? But
Mhm.
there are really inexpensive tools that are, base CRMs that you should use instead of using an Excel sheet. They'll just make things a lot better. And then they can integrate into some of these other tools for you. Jeremy, any
Yeah.
other questions? Looks like we got a lot
Yeah,
of questions.
he
I'm going to get that out really fast for people if we need to.
for sure. Yeah, he has one follow-up
Yeah, go
thing
for it.
after that. Really quick, I would like to say I like what you said about the three giving a marketing plan at least 3 months, because I think a lot of business owners, especially more on the startup side, they do an approach and they have a 30-day mentality behind it. And they're like, okay, if this doesn't work in 30 days or even 60 days sometimes, it doesn't work. Not true. Like there's so many
Yeah.
things you can tweak in just one advertising campaign, from the copy, the creative to the landing page. There's just too much.
Yeah.
So it's too much of a blanket statement a lot of times.
There's this adage that I like to use a lot. It's delegate, follow up, follow through. And if you're C-level executive, and just from an internal perspective, look, I like to if I'm gonna delegate month one. And what do I mean? Look, whoever you hire or whoever you engage as a vendor to work with, it's your duty and obligation to make sure that they understand who you are, not assume. A lot of times we assume that they just understand us or they'll go figure things out. I think it makes sense. And if you're not
Exactly.
willing to do it yourself, have stakeholders within your organization talk to them, let the salespeople talk to them, or again, it doesn't take a lot, an hour conversation. Mars Studio, we call them listening sessions. We expect to do listening sessions with the owners or managers or stakeholders or other people who are engaged with the client communications, and really just absorb and understand who they are and what their pain points are and what their needs are, and maybe even identify or uncover some solutions. So, and then the follow up, I think the delegate follow up, the second month is follow up. It's really where you're like, okay, what have we done? What are we seeing? Show me the numbers. And really making sure you're checking on things and making adjustments and making sure everybody's doing everything they can do to maximize whatever project that you kind of initiated. And then the
Mhm.
follow through, that's kind of like the last month where you come back and say, okay, show me the numbers, show me the results, show me the
Mhm.
fruits of our labor, show me the because also, like, let's say you're doing a direct mail piece or you're doing a social media piece. How many touches are going to get in that first month, right? It's the second month that you're going to get, the additional touches that you need you can get to a 50% conversion rate. And that's only going to happen after 8 to 12 touches. So,
Exactly.
clients send out one postcard and they're like, I didn't hear anything back. Well, that's just one
Exactly.
touch, 1% conversion rate potential. You send out 2,800 postcards, you're likely to just get 28 people to engage or touch the postcard in essence. And then
Yeah.
from that, what's the percentage that will actually reach out to you? That's going to be, depending on the quality of the asset, what steps
Yeah.
they're going to take and what can you learn from that and how can you track it and then improve it? Any other
Yeah.
questions we got that are burning?
Yeah, it's just one last thing I want to add to that.
Yeah.
I kind of view it like watering a plant. Like in the first month, you're just putting that plant in the dirt and you're just starting the initial phases of watering it. But the more you water it, if we compare that to like touch points, it's starting to really, germinate and grow. So um the 3 months is very key. But Aleem follows up and he says he's been in the market since January, or it's been in the market since January of this year. It's an affiliate outreach bot. We want to scale it into all service provisions and handling a TikTok shop and e-commerce store. So it seems like it's like a all-encompassing type of product.
Yeah. So again, so based on the quality of the questions that are being asked, I feel like there's some depth here in terms of what's been done and what's been developed.
Mm,
My recommendation would be to engage someone to have a much deeper conversation about this. Because like for most of the questions you're asking, I can immediately think of like three follow-up questions. And then,
exactly.
looking at the bot, having someone look at the bot, evaluate the bot, that's going to help them help you determine, what you need to do and what the next steps need to be.
Yeah.
So, yeah, we do one-on-one consultation sessions. So, Jeremy, you have that slide. Are you able to share that
Yeah, I
slide?
do. Yeah.
So we can actually share that slide with you, Alam, and anybody else who's on right now. I hope nobody jumped off too early because you can do a one-on-one session with me where we can do just, have a conversation just about your needs. So that's what I would recommend at this point. Um,
Yeah, just a second. I'll go ahead
so
and
that we can get to a lot of other people and the questions that they might have. And I can actually, get to what I wanted to get to. But yeah, I would love to do a one-on-one. It's a complimentary one-on-one. It actually helps you see what our sessions are like with our team. Because we're a top-down
yeah.
company. There you go. So, you might want to scan that. You can let us know if it works for you, but it should. Otherwise, you can just go to our website as well. and fill out one of the contact forms. But this will get you the free offer. It's a QR code for a free consultation, and that's a one-on-one, and it's with me. So feel free to scan that. Book yourself a session. If I'm not mistaken, I think this QR code goes directly to a calendar where you can book a session. So you can book it. If there's any conflicts, Karen, my chief communications officer, will reach out to you and work with rescheduling. But go ahead and pick an available time and date right now that works for you. I'll jump on with you. We can explore, look at the bot together. You can tell me more about it. And then I can give you a lot more insight than I am here. So I hope that helps. But this would be a good way to do that.
Yep.
If anybody else is on and they want to, jump on or ask any questions, I want to make sure I give everybody like equal airtime. Don't hesitate to jump on or ask a question.
Yeah.
We can hook you up.
So there's a follow-up question, Ryan, but should we talk really quickly about kind of break it up where we talk really quickly about how we first started this webinar approach about a year ago.
Yeah, let's do it.
Yeah, and then we'll get to Aleem's question.
Yes,
So we started our live Q&A town hall approach exactly pretty much a year ago, November 2023. And the beginning stages of it was a lot of learning for sure, both in terms of when you do live webinars, you have to understand the marketing behind it, but also you have to understand the product you're actually delivering. And then even in those two things, there's a lot of sub-divided steps within them. We're talking about marketing. Okay, what's your channel? How actively are you marketing it? What automations are you using for it? When we're looking at the product itself, the webinar or the live event that you're utilizing, how are you structuring it? What's the style? There's different styles. There's presentation styles. There's Q&A styles like Chevy does. There's like free flowing styles. Even when it comes to software that you use, you and your team understanding how to utilize it. And what we found was that it's best to be actively in the game utilizing it rather than theorizing, as in it's not just about tutorials. You have to actually run a webinar and learn from what you ran. And what we did was after each webinar, we had post-webinar calls analyzing and breaking down our results and also breaking down our approach, what worked and what didn't work. And what we noticed is pretty much each month our approach got better and more refined. So I'm going to stop there. I'll turn over to you, Chevy. What were some things early on that you noticed with our webinar approach via Zoom?
Bear with me. I'm changing
Sure.
something that I just found. Let me see if that works. Yeah.
Okay.
Let me do one more thing really quick.
Aleem said the guy in space is saying the name right, which is me. So it's pronounced Aleem.
How do you pronounce it?
Aleem. I think you were saying alum.
Aleem?
Aleem, yeah.
Aleem, got it.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm definitely I wasn't hearing it right, I think.
Gotcha. Okay. Yep, showing up now.
Let me see if that
Yep.
all works. Boom. There we go. There we go. Yeah,
Yep.
I wanted to fix that because we'll get to this in a minute, but one of the things we were going to talk about is that we're going to be reutilizing this webinar, this engagement, in order to create some of our new live streams and some of our new streaming content. And this is going to be, an opportunity for us to introduce our streaming content. So for anybody who's on the webinar or going to receive this webinar or see this webinar, they're going to hear about that. And that's what we're here to talk about. But to get back, Jeremy, to your question, because we're trying to, in the spirit of space and Mars Studio and everything, which maybe we need to
Yeah.
explain that too at some point. But yeah, in terms of talking about Mars Studio's history, but this is kind of like the Apollo program. It's funny that the webinar program has become the Apollo program for us, and the streaming thing that we're gonna do moving forward into the future is really kind of like our SpaceX,
Yeah.
our Starship program. But at the same time, in all seriousness, yeah, there's so many comparables that I want to talk about, and the value of each, and the purpose of each, and what I learned from it. But I think what stood out to me the most was that just, it reminds me. Doing the webinar reminds me because as a corporation, we have all these really bright, smart people within the organization, right? You have digital marketing experts, you have dev experts, you have app experts, plugin experts, e-commerce experts, pay-per-click experts, design experts. It runs the gamut. We're doing like social media marketing, and here we are. We're like, oh, we just want to use another channel. We want to use, um, webinars to see if we can engage our audience in a unique way, or have a more sophisticated conversation,
Mhm.
essentially be a subject matter expert, a thought leader in the space, and you start and this endeavor, and you're like, wow, there are just so many unique nuances to running webinars and how you can run them. So like I remember the first webinar we did, we just ran it on our regular Zoom, right?
Mhm.
And then you realize the limitations of reaching audiences and so forth and so on. So then you go to a platform built with Zoom, where it's Zoom Workplace, or allows you to host events and have panelists and attendees and have the Q&A
Yep.
features. So,
Mhm.
you constantly realize what you don't know. And that it brings me to a point, and this is an important marketing point as well, that everybody should be aware of, business point that you should be aware of. It's one of the number one reasons I continue to network, even though I'm tired, I'm old. I want to find more efficient ways, right, to reach my target audience, to get those accounts. But I still like to go out there and network, because there's 5% of what I know, 5% of what I don't know, and then 90% of what I don't know. So going into chamber of commerce events, going to SEO CEO roundtables, hearing about other people's problems, hearing about other people's solutions, hearing about vendors coming in and presenting information, or business leaders talking about the past. It sheds light on what you don't know. So whenever we, take on a new project, of course, as the senior chief marketing officer, I'm ultimately responsible for figuring out how to do the project, or what resources go into the project, or how to pay for the project, or what's available out there. So I really
Mhm.
try hard to even go outside of my own comfort zone and talk to people and ask questions. And I feel like that's a lot of times how we uncover new ways of doing things. And originally it happened accidentally, Jeremy. Like, let's say you're engaged with a lead gen company who's
Mhm.
identifying business directory leads, or internet service provider links that are coming to your website, and then you happen to engage another vendor years later to talk about whatever thing they're selling, and a question comes up, and you realize that there's a limitation between the company you're working with and the company that you're talking to, because they're based out of UK, and there's a law requirement in the UK that limits them from giving you access to certain information that this company who's based in the US can give you, and you stumble upon that accidentally, and you're like, oh man, I wish I knew that the reason they couldn't give me that data is because they're in UK, and UK limits the laws of what they can capture when it comes to consumer information. So then as you start running into these obstacles and into these like good problems, I guess, when you uncover things that you otherwise didn't know, it makes you go seek that more often. I remember when Mars Studio in its first inception, running reports was so scary, because you're like, I don't want to see if what I'm doing is working or not working, or hold myself accountable. It's like giving yourself a report card. But now, if you noticed in the first half hour that we've been on this call, I talked about KPI, client acquisition cost, data, making sure you understand your target audience, who you're trying to reach, and your numbers before you even start moving forward, right? Because it's become a reality that in order to uncover solutions, you have to be willing to identify the problem. You have to be willing to do the evaluation. You have to be willing to seek
Yeah.
counsel.
Yeah.
So back to your core question, and sorry, I'm definitely excited about where we're about to go, and I think where we're about to go is going to be a medium that's going to allow us to do more of what I'm excited about doing, and maybe that's why I'm kind of like really energetic about it, because I feel like the webinar, because of the production requirement that goes into a webinar, there was a limitation on maybe the scope of the conversation. I don't know, maybe that's not true, maybe others could bounce around like this, but what I think streaming allows us to do, it allows us to take a 90-minute segment and make it into, let's say, from 30 seconds to 3 minutes per clip on a short side. I'm sure there might be some 10-minute productions here and there. So I'll take a 90-minute clip and potentially produce anywhere from minimum 90 to approximately 180 different clips. And those don't have to be covering the same content subject matter. Um, you can branch that. It's kind of like putting a slug in your shotgun and taking a shot and having all of that volatile energy just hit one target versus putting like a buckshot in, and or even better, a bird shot, and taking a shot and having a digital kind of like signature or digital output that's like,
Yeah.
it's like having one satellite versus the Starlink satellite systems that Elon has done. Yeah,
Yeah.
man, the number of satellites that are in space right now just for Starlink, they're just mind-boggling. It's like in the thousands. It's like crazy, just the number of satellites. If people think it's in the hundreds, it's like it might even be in the tens of thousands in terms of just the Starlink satellites that are going around the Earth right now. But anyways, um, yeah. So where do you want to go from here, Jeremy? We're kind of like at the 30
Yeah.
minute mark. I
Yeah.
feel like we haven't spent as much time, discussing the history. So we should definitely, explore a little bit more of the historical aspects and the differences. I do want to share one thing. I want to highlight this, and maybe we'll come back to it in a couple different ways. But I want to highlight how like webinars are more I feel this is just my interpretation. And again, I would love, maybe one of the things we'll do on our new streams in the future is bring on a panelist that, disagrees with me and when it comes to webinars. But I feel like webinars on this specific issue, I feel like webinars are more like captive audience ecosystems. So I feel like they're
Yeah.
good for inviting an audience that knows you to come and sit with you, and you're in kind of like breaking bread with your people. Like imagine an auditorium in a school or at a college where you invite people that know the speaker, and people will attend because they know the speaker. And
Mm.
and I feel like this is a really good environment for celebrities, politicians, public speakers that are commonly known, where the name brand will, bring the captive audience into that auditorium, into the webinar. And then whether it be free or Eventbrite or paid, you're going to get people attending because of the speaker. Now, we've been able to achieve that to a degree, but within a commercial realm, within a informational realm, within a needs-based realm. But then the only people that are willing to jump through the hoops or attend are ultimately the people that know about the product. So going back to, there's 5% of what you know, there's 5% of what you don't know, and then there's a 90% of what you don't know. So I feel very strongly, and our team feels very strongly, that we need to, focus more on, sometimes you need to focus more on brand awareness as opposed to lead gen. Because when you're doing lead gen, you're only reaching the people that maybe know about you, or even if they see your solicitation ad, it's only going to resonate with them because they understand what you're pitching to them.
Mhm.
Whereas there's 90% of this target audience that doesn't even know you exist, doesn't understand or has knowledge of your services or the extent or the breadth of your capabilities. And you have to find a way to reach those folks. So I think the 90% who don't know we exist, the 90% who don't know there's a capability such as a senior chief marketing officer that can help them do a gap analysis of their marketing, identify priorities, help them, align their mission and their goal and their needs and solutions in order to achieve those, priorities.
Yeah.
Then they're not gonna ever ask, who the heck is Mars Studio? What is it? What's a marketing agency? What's a chief marketing officer? What's even the purpose? So I think instead of just sitting in an auditorium and preaching to the choirs, and no offense against our awesome, amazing, fans and people that come and attend and participate and ask the questions and love the value of the information. And I'm willing to make time for those folks by doing the one-on-ones. But what about the folks that don't know about that? And what about the folks that, I feel like I'm at church. I feel like when my pastor is like, hey, we don't need to preach to the people in here. The church isn't
Exactly.
supposed to be like this, like, bunker. It's supposed to where everybody comes in for shelter and protection. The church is supposed to be a battleship. We're supposed to go out and, make disciples and get people to
Mm,
follow us. So if
yeah.
people don't know we exist and people don't know the word, right, we got to get the word to them, and that's brand awareness.
Yeah.
And brand awareness ultimately turns to a lead gen campaign when you have enough touches, because ultimately, when I watch a McDonald's commercial, right, that's brand awareness. But at the same time, when I'm out and I'm hungry, I'm like, oh, I want to now eat McDonald's. So that brand awareness campaign now turned into, McDonald's isn't expecting that when you see the commercial, you're gonna go, dropping everything I'm doing. I'm gonna drive over to McDonald's and pick. Now it's brand awareness that eventually leads to lead generation when you do get hungry and that thought comes to your mind. So
Yeah.
again, it's like, hey, if people know who we are and what we do, then they're gonna want to engage us, and that's true for any other business that's out there. If you're a commodity that people are familiar with, then you better be on channels where those folks who look for you can find you. So if you're not on those channels and they're looking for you, so if they're on Google and they're searching for you, and you don't have an organic presence, SEO presence, search engine optimization presence on Google where you're going to come up organically, nor are you paying for some sort of pay per click or paid marketing for that person searching for you in a Google search to find you, and you're not on Yahoo and you're not on AOL, which are secondary, and you're not on DuckDuckGo, and you're nowhere to be found, then how are people who know about your product going to find you? And then if they don't know about you, then no one's going to search for you. So it's your
Mhm.
responsibility to go and, solicit them or get the word out there. So again, um, I'd love to, have a more of a conversation in the future. This isn't a webinar streaming show. We're talking about webinar and streaming on this show on during this Mars Studio Q&A town hall, because we're literally going through an evolution, and I felt it was interesting to share this with our audience, share our experience that we've uncovered, and also leverage this as an opportunity, Jeremy, like we discussed, to let everyone know, hey guys, we're moving. We're
Mhm.
moving our address. We're moving from an ISS, or actually, more of a, if you think about it, going back to the space analogy, we used to have like just a one rocket to launch with like all the supplies at once, and now you can have a Falcon 9 that takes off and lands and takes off and lands. So the streaming is going to be a lot more rapid fire. We can hit a lot of different subjects. I'm thinking of being even more transparent, even more open during the streaming programs. Bringing on panelists and speakers, bringing on our own team members, Some
Mhm.
of you on this webinar, on this town hall, you've probably seen Sam, our chief creative officer. Um, but yeah, so Jeremy, what's your thought? What's on your mind? Let's kind of wrap up the history stuff. But do you have any other
Yep.
questions about the history?
Yes. So I'd like us first to talk about some takeaways from the history. But before that, I do want to say that it's important to consider content as touch points as well. They're not as direct as messaging or an ad all the time, but you're still top of mind. And you're repeating the times in which someone thinks about you. So I think it's easy to just look at content and say, oh, well, it's just content. Or
Yeah.
it's some people, it's hard to see the direct ROI of that, but you can't underestimate brand awareness. Like Chevy said, he's when he sees the McDonald's commercial, he's not thinking of having McDonald's that minute. But 4 p.m. the next day or 5 p.m. a week later, he's eating McDonald's. Sometimes he knows it's because of the commercial. A lot of times he probably doesn't know it's because of the commercial. And that's what like great brand awareness is. Like whatever is top of mind, when the person thinks about it, it's because that company or that entity showed up enough times to the point where the person it's like an everyday part of that person's life, or the person's like actively like, oh, I saw that commercial, let me go there or let me invest in that thing. Um, for me, I think a great takeaway from our webinar approach was the importance of subject matter experts and consulting with them. Um, a team member we brought on did a fantastic job in terms of advising us and pointing out the mistakes we've made. And that only made our webinar approach even better. And the fact that we are where we are now is a testament to his inputs. And that's just a lesson that I think a lot of people watching this can learn from, is just the importance of, hey, if I don't know how to do something, there's someone out there that can save me a lot of time by either doing it themselves or consulting me on how to do it. And it's going to alleviate so much frustration and energy that I would have expended on that. Chevy, what are your thoughts on the importance of consulting with an expert, or at least having some sort of expert on the team if you don't have an employee yourself?
Yeah. Um, I thank you. I think you did an excellent job just there, Jeremy, really encapsulating the mission behind the Q&A town hall. The Q&A town hall, which is going to continue on the streaming channels. The Q&A town hall is to, enlighten people and empower people to be comfortable with asking questions in whatever way, however way they need to, in order to get those questions answered, to be put on the right path. I'm a true believer there's no dumb question, because if it matters to you and if it'll help you get a little closer to understanding something, all of us are going to be embarrassed because you're going to be somewhere to go and say, who knows what a noun is? Who knows what a verb is? Who knows what an adjective and proverb? And everybody's faking it at this point. They're like, I can't remember exactly what they are, but we'll say we know because we don't want to, Um, couple notes really fast on the same thought, and we'll talk about experts. Jeff Bezos, another rocket guy. Not a huge fan of his, but rocket guy nonetheless. His boardroom meetings, Jeremy.
They're
Um,
very fast.
and no, every board member. So no PowerPoint presentations.
Mm,
The notes have to be typed out 2 pages long, right? And
mm,
what they'll do is, um, they'll each board member will have a half an hour dedicated time to read it, because Jeff is like,
mm,
people at our like C-level caliber will like fake it through like the meeting, because they'll be like, everybody will be like, yeah, I read that, right? Because they want to talk about it. So instead of like, because they know people are busy and sometimes people won't read it, and instead of just them relying on what they know and generally understanding the subject, they're like, hey, let's have a more meaningful engagement. Let's have you folks read this for half an hour so we can then have a really meaningful, substantive conversation. That's why I always say I love
mm.
working meetings. I don't want anyone to ever feel, because a lot of people are like, well, I don't know. And I'm like, don't worry about it. Let's get on the meeting and we'll all discuss where everybody is, and we'll discuss where we are, and we'll share where we are for everyone to hear it. because your question might give insight or affirmation or acclamation to the project or the process that we're talking about. But anyways,
Mhm.
on that same note, talking about like space leaders, Elon Musk was like, he actually has we've adopted at Mars Studio his like work rules. And one of the rules we adopted was, hey, explain things in a simple way for other people to understand. Like, don't use fancy
Always.
words, acronyms, like if you don't
Mhm.
know what ROI or client acquisition cost or any of this thing is, just ask like, hey, can you break that down to me? Like, don't feel like, or and also if you're explaining it to someone, break it down for them to understand. So and then why am I sharing all this? Because you said something and I want to highlight it. You mentioned content,
Mhm.
and you mentioned how content is a form of touches. And I just want to highlight something for everyone, and we should definitely clip this, and this should become something that propagates on all of our streaming channels from this clip, which is not to forget using Elon Musk keep it simple model. And hey, I'll even emphasize this one other way. I went to law school, and I was a trial attorney. I was also a police officer. I've taken a witness stand. Another thing they always say is, hey, when you're on the stand, when you're asking questions, ask simple questions so the jury will understand what you're saying, right? Don't
Yep.
say the suspect approached from the rear of the vehicle and began to batter the subject. No, the guy came from the back of the car and grabbed the victim and punched him in the face, right? Like, don't use language that people don't understand. Battery, like what, he used the battery of the car and he did a transmission change. Like, people don't always understand the language. So again,
Yeah.
it's really important. Content, touches, impressions, clicks, conversion, brand awareness, lead. It's all marketing. And marketing in its purest form is communication. And communication is simply talking to someone. So give your kid a rotary phone and tell them to call 911. They will not be able to call 911 on a rotary phone. You're giving them a very simple
Complicated.
tool. You're asking them to do something emergent, like call 911. It's only 3 numbers, and they will not know that they need to stick their finger in the nine, go all the way around, stop at the metal thing, let go, let it unwind, take the handset off while they're doing this process. They'll never be able to achieve it, right? So Facebook, and it's Alim. Did I say that right, Jeremy?
Elaine.
I don't know if
Yeah.
Alim's still on, but if he is and he's listening to this, and he was talking about TikTok, TikTok is no different than a rotary phone. They're simply communication tools, and they have an operating procedure that you have to use to function. And then it becomes really critical that you hire the right person, someone who has knowledge of a rotary phone. You could put 200 12-year-olds in a room, and they're still not going to know how to use the rotary phone. It's not a manpower issue, knowledge issue. And that's why like people like laugh when that technology, we don't know how to do it anymore, because what they did and how they did it with the people that did it 100 years ago is not the same people who are alive and who are running things today. The computing
Yeah.
power of our computers today just completely eclipses my phone can do more than the computer could do when they were running the Apollo mission at the IBM Center. Anyways,
Yeah.
um, information. So the emphasis. So to piggyback on what you were saying, Jeremy, it's just communication. And if you wanna delve into it, find some good folks that are gonna just help you do that stuff, so that you don't have to navigate this uncharted world completely on your own. Because if people can't figure out how to use a rotary phone on their own, and it's gonna take so much time and energy to do that, what makes you think? what makes me think? Me, I won't even talk to you. Maybe you're a lot smarter than me. I've been doing this for 3 decades. I've been doing sales and marketing in some facet my whole life. I've been in public service for 15 years, so I feel like that's service in some way. But at the end of the day, look, in law enforcement, I'm an attorney. That also requires communication skills. What makes you think that you can go and be a police officer or a lawyer or a social media marketing expert on your own? This is where I'm like, I get help. And this is where, like, for example, at Mars Studio, we have Devin, right? Who's Devin? Well, Devin is our digital marketing subject matter expert who specifically focuses on Meta, Facebook advertising or marketing. Like if you want to do TikTok, then there's going to be a different subject matter expert for that. I actually think Devin can touch TikTok, but we may have better resources for our TikTok marketing than Devin. But that's an example that
Yeah,
I'm just sharing with you.
for sure.
Jeremy, what other thoughts come to your mind while we're hitting on what we're hitting on? And by the way, folks, if anybody has a question that hasn't already gotten a chance to ask a question, you're on the
Mhm.
call. Feel free to throw it out there. We'll get it answered for you.
I think that's the main thing, just the importance of consulting subject matter experts and just refining your strategy through time. I think a long-term mindset when it comes to your marketing plan is important too. You know, starting at 3 months, depending on what your campaign objective is, of course. I would like to quickly get to one of Alim's follow-up questions
Sure.
related to what he asked before. So he said that my current strategy is to offer VAs a percentage for every e-commerce brand they shift to our bot. But I don't think many VAs have influence in making decisions, do they? So I guess he's saying he's not sure that VAs can influence the sales process enough for them to be consistent, like a consistent referral approach essentially
Yeah, so I'll tell
for
you
his
what my
bot.
I'll tell you what my immediate gut instinct is that comes out, and it's not how I would approach it as a
Mhm.
disciplined CMO doing an engagement, but we're on a webinar, so I can do whatever I want. So my gut instinct is don't take the approach of thinking about it as a VA, government procurement officer, hospital administrator. Think of them as people.
Mhm.
People make decisions, people make referrals. And you got to identify, going back to the original exercise, the almighty brand, your audience, understanding your audience, because if you understand your audience, you can help them. And in helping them, do you know their pain points? Do you know their needs? Um, what problem can this solve for those VA folks, and how can it help your target client that also happens to be their endpoint contact as well?
Mhm.
Again, in order for me to give you a more sophisticated answer, I would want to better understand your product. I would want to get your insight on who your target audience is. Um, and then we can, I would want to better understand the VA, and the correlation between your product, the audience, and you in order and the VA. In order to be able
Mhm.
to figure out how to package that. So here's what you're trying to do, though. So there may be a correlation, but then my follow-up question to you would be, or part of my assessment project or audit project would be, show me everything you're using to communicate who you are and your value proposition to whomever, whether
Exactly.
it's um, the end consumer or the VA. Show me what you're using to communicate that to them. And you're like, I don't use anything. I'm like, well, then how do you do it? You're like, oh, I go meet with them one on one. I give them that firsthand VIP feeling. I'm like there talking to them. I'm not saying you're doing this, but this may relate to some other folks. Have you ever been thirsty? Have you ever had water coming through a pipe and you have no vessel to catch it with? and it's a really low sink, and you put your hands under there and you try to get some water and you try to trick some, and it falls through your fingers, and then you try to do it over and over again. Those are the leads, those are the opportunities falling through your fingers, because you're trying to use your oral ability, just your hand language, body language, and your mouth to communicate your value proposition to this end audience. So if you have a piece of paper, just a simple piece of white paper with some
Mhm.
information on it, basic, just bullet points of who you are and why your product is valuable to um the end consumer or the VA, well, guess what? You just made it easier for them to understand your value proposition. That's like having a
Exactly.
styrofoam cup to catch the water that you want to drink from. But have you ever been really thirsty and on a golf course or somewhere or at a school and they have those little cones? And you're like, by the time you fill it up and drink it, it's like a sippy cut. It like drives you nuts, right? You're like, you're not even getting enough substance, and it's like really unproductive and inefficient, right? So again, how do I make that? Maybe I make it a 3-page presentation. Now it's a styrofoam cup. Maybe I
Mhm.
print it in color. Now it's a solo cup. Maybe I do a case study, or maybe I do some sort of sales sheet or sales production sheet or sales presentation. Well, now I have a branded thermos that has my logo on it and keeps my clients cool or warm, and it's larger and can hold more whatever. Hot
Mhm.
clients hot, cold clients cold, branded, marketed, built to communicate who you are and what your bot is to the end user and why they should invest in it. What are some metrics or numbers or benefits or value propositions behind your product? So how, again, coming back to what we were talking about and what this whole process is, we're about to switch channels, right? I feel like we're going from analog TV to digital TV, or even better. A lot of people haven't seen this clip of when all the broadcast companies went from black and white to color. If you haven't done that, you got to Google old clips of broadcasts and all the different TV channels and what they did differently when they went from black and white to color. There was also, I don't know, for those of you that aren't that old, you may remember when we went away from, like, VH, the antennas, and all of a sudden we all lost our antennas and a lot of people lost their TV reception. But anyways, we're switching channels, or we're going from webinar to streaming. Why are we doing that? Because we want to have a better broadband. We want to have better bandwidth. We want to reach stream to more people, reach a bigger audience. Why? Because not to reach more people, believe it or not. We're not doing this for quantity purposes. Well, Chevy, if you're not doing it for quantity, you're doing it for quality. Well, you could say that you're getting much better quality here, because for someone like Alim, I hope I said that
Mhm.
right.
Yep, that's
Alim
correct.
is getting a lot of quality. Alim is getting a lot of questions answered and getting access to, myself and you, Jeremy. And if there's anybody else on the call, too bad for you not asking questions. You should be. But Alim's definitely taking advantage on getting his questions in. But that's the
Yep.
thing. It's like, but here's the thing. The reason we want to broadcast to a bigger audience is we're hoping that we can reach that one individual within the audience who has no idea we exist, that
Exactly.
that
Hmm.
doesn't know we're there, has never heard of the concepts I'm talking about, who would find this episode enjoyable. um Maybe I have a problem. I enjoy myself too much. I am guilty of laughing at my own dad jokes. So that's for true. That's true. My daughters are like, Dad, you tell the joke and then you laugh. It's like, that's not how it works. I'm like, whatever. And like, you're just mad that I'm fat and happy. Anyways. Um, all right. So hey, we're like in our last 1/3 segment of our show, the last 30 minutes. So if you haven't gotten a question out there, I see a Natalia on a. I'm not going to say any names because I'm gonna butcher people's names. But hey, the only reason I'm mentioning it is because I think Natalia. I think I
Natalia.
saw your note taker earlier. And I was like, hey, this is a smart person. They sent their note taker in to take notes on the webinar,
Very
even
smart.
though they couldn't make it. I was like, that's smart. I was like, that's kind of creative. But anyways, and hey, if we can get our subject matter out there, we can get it out there. Hey, but if you're on and you have a question, ask it in the last half hour. But during
Yeah.
the last half hour, Jeremy, I could spend all day, and maybe we definitely are going to talk about the webinar more on our new
Mhm.
streaming network and live events and that we're doing, and we'll revisit it and let anybody who's actually specifically interested in that space talk about it, and we can definitely be really insightful about it. But I want to talk about what we're going to do and some of the projects we have lined up and how it's going to be different than just the Mars Studio Q&A town hall. So yeah, but I'll let you do the transition for us, Jeremy. What are your thoughts?
So can I leave some last minute insights for Aline before we get into the newer topic?
Yeah, go fire,
Okay.
fire.
Okay. So, Aleem, I think leverage is very key for you. So, Chevy mentioned examples of leverage like case studies, white papers of some kind, maybe landing pages where you can share a link or you can share something with someone and they can intake that information and then know what your service is about. But I think another form of leverage for you is if VAs are your target market and they're like your referral people, there are agencies out there that specifically specialize in training VAs and hiring them out to other companies. You can get in contact with those VA owners and basically sell them on your product. And you're doing two things. They're able to be referrals, but they have access to maybe other agency owners and VAs of their own, which is a good amount. On top of that, they could even be customers of yours where maybe you can wholesale it, whatever you want to do, but you can be their go-to product that their VAs utilize, and it could be one client, but that's a big client essentially. So I think thinking in that sort of way will go a long way for your chatbot. But um, yeah, so related to where we're going with the
And if
streaming,
you're
yes,
if
it's
you're if you're doing marketing on TikTok, everything that Jeremy said is what needs to be encapsulated in a clear value proposition message, which is
100%.
ultimately what you're going to need to do to have a successful social media campaign. And you're more than welcome to go on Facebook. We're not on TikTok, but we're on Facebook and see some of our ads that run. Or like I said, if you do the one-on-one with me, I'll show you those. But there's a kind of like a structure to them. But you want to make sure you're encapsulating that structure and that call to action. But that's the hard part. Doing the due diligence, knowing what to include, and then creating it. And then it's not just the text, but it's the composition of the text, the composition of the copy, the composition of the call to action, including the imagery that's used. And with TikTok, you're using primarily imagery. So you're going to have to,
Mhm.
if you have text copy, how do you transcribe that? What are you going to do an illustration, or are you going to do a talking head? Or you're going to show people. So there's a lot of different ways to do that. And then the question is, who's your target audience and how do they want to receive the information? And then what information is pertinent to them, not you. A lot of people make the mistake of putting themselves in their own shoes and saying, "Oh, my product is great because of what I think." No, you got to put yourself in the VA, and you mentioned that they're the end user as well. So you got to put yourself in the shoes of the end user and be able to articulate what it is that you need there.
Yeah. But yeah, continuing on with where we're going, like forward wise, yeah, our main vehicle, LinkedIn, where we will be, streaming these events, is a lower barrier to entry for a lot of people. And going back to what Chevy said earlier on the call with the whole, hey, there's 90% of things I don't know that I don't know. You could be by streaming on a more accessible platform where people don't really have to register. Like you're there, you pop up, or they get a notification. They may come across a piece of information, even if they just watch for the first 5 minutes, maybe the first 10 minutes. They may come across the first piece of information that they don't know, compared to the audience in a given webinar where it's more enclosed. Maybe maybe they're there for a specific reason. You're casting a wider net and you're having even more people that are seeing what you're putting out there. And there's more people that'll be like, aha, I didn't know that, I didn't know that, compared to people on the webinar that even if still a good amount of people, it's still less in comparison to the potential of a live stream on a platform like LinkedIn. On top of that, if your video is getting engagement and you're, putting the right content out there, it's going to show to more people and so on and so forth. So it's kind of like the snowball effect that can really go on. And going back to leverage, it's really high leverage because if you think about it, you make it once and it's there essentially forever. And it doesn't just have to be on that platform. If you want to share it with your newsletter audience, you can do that. You know, this is something Chevy wants to do. He wants to clip up the video too and share those little portions. And then those little portions can be content in and of themselves that you can share on other platforms as you wish. So it's a lot of high leverage that can really go on. I mean, with content like that, live streams, people can contact you literally like 6 months later and say, "Hey, I came across your live stream that you did once." They won't say it like this, but you did once 6 months ago. And it's very valuable for them. So it's a very high leverage vehicle.
I agree. Um, I was just looking over the questions really quick.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, sorry, I got like all quiet all of a sudden. Yeah, so for me, um, there's all those components in terms of reaching that broader audience. But I also wanted to, I think this is maybe something I want to highlight, which is that I wanted to find a way to make to build on the episodes. Like it just, um I felt like the marketing Q&A town hall was nice, but there wasn't any, like for example, today we've answered questions, but we've also been discussing a particular topic. And it's not an arbitrary topic. It's actually a topic we're currently in the premise of executing, which is moving from a webinar platform to a streaming platform and letting everyone experience that with us and see what that's going to look and feel like.
Mhm.
And then sharing that we're going through that process and with everybody and using it the process as a promotion to streaming. Um, so and when we start streaming, the goal is not to just do the same old Q&A style town hall, but to actually find projects that we're going to execute. And in executing those projects, we're going to stream those projects. We're going to discuss those projects. And if that resonates with folks, then we're going to let folks engage and ask questions about those projects. So that's the other part that I think I'm just as excited about. So I am excited about the freedom of the platform because there's been times where, I got off 90 minutes later and it can be at times hard on some folks, especially if you're hosting or listening or doing the technical side, to go beyond that scope, or
Mhm.
even for our audience. I don't know how much people want to listen to beyond 90 minutes, but after the fact, or maybe the next day, I'm inspired and to share more content or more information, or to dig deeper into maybe a part of the conversation, and there isn't that opportunity because right now, the way we have it scheduled is that these webinars are happening monthly. Well,
Mhm.
the streaming can happen weekly, daily, and again,
Mhm.
it's not a 90-minute production where we would make a lot of effort to invite people to have questions answered preemptively and things of that nature, or inquire about questions preemptively, and then try to work those very narrow leads and opportunities. Where here, we're really doing more of a, public engagement. Like take that auditorium show and just take it into an open, forum, whether you want to think of it as a mall or, some, roadshow where people can actually hear the subject matter being shared so then they can decide to engage in it. I think it's just going to have a different feel. But again, so beyond the venue and the channel change, I think I'm excited that we're gonna keep the Mars Studio Q&A, but we're gonna be visiting projects. We're gonna be talking about projects. And
Mhm.
then, so this might make sense or might not make sense, but we're gonna also create parallel channels that will hit on these projects. So I know that, for example, Sam has two channels, and one was really actually adopted directly into our process. One of the original concepts that Sam had, our chief creative officer, the founder of the company, was an entity that he had branded as the Almighty Brand. And he was beginning to create some content and messaging around it. Eventually, the Almighty Brand became part of Mars Studio's signature process. But if I'm not mistaken, and I hope I don't butcher this, but speaking of TikTok, actually, he started a new brand called Brand to Thrive, um, and he's doing very focused. It's a very focused brand channel that specifically talks about brand history and brand content. So that's like an example of a spin-off stream that I can visualize coming from this.
Mhm.
Um, um, on the more fun side, there's one that I can share with you guys. There's been my family has been involved in the golf community, and not from the perspective you might think. And I actually think that that's why it makes for an interesting potential avenue to share, or talk about marketing. So I'm not a PGA golfer. I've never played golf. I wasn't a golfer when my kids started playing golf. I was actually completely introduced to the sport from scratch. Well, I've kind of developed this nickname over time, Daddy Caddy, right? Just like a daddy that's there with his kids and, supporting his kids. And throughout that time, just like any other experience, if you spend, a lot of time doing it, you're going to learn a lot. Well, my kids have been playing golf since they were 4 and 6, and I've been around the sport since, it's for 10 years now. So there's a lot I know and a lot that I can share about swing coaches and clubs and equipment and what if we took that and made it into a business, right? What if we made that into an affiliate marketing business or into, I don't want to give too much away, but so the channel, for example, that we're thinking of creating and streaming would be something that we would refer to as Daddy Caddy. So we're not just going to be doing marketing Q&A town halls and sitting here as CMOs and doing these engagements that are kind of maybe boring, maybe not boring. I hope not everyone's bored. I do think that we have some good, we've had hundreds of people attend our webinar at this point, if not thousands. But we have hundreds that are registered for our events and they can, attend at any time. But I think that the reach is going to just exponentially grow. And I think it'll be a more fun way instead of sitting here and going, what questions do you have? And let's make up hypothetical questions. Or here, what we're going to do is, come up with a business concept or come up with a marketing concept and then build on that and share that with you and go through that. So if we created a channel, for example, it's one that's being considered, um, Daddy Caddy, we're gonna try to develop that and then go forward with it in some way. So, anyways, there's a lot to still do, and there's other parallel channels that we're gonna create. One idea that I can share, another idea that I can share is that we've contemplated is what if we found the right client that wants to go live with their campaign. So that
Mhm.
was an idea that was pitched around. So we're gonna explore that idea. So um, maybe it's Aleem, maybe it's someone else. But if it's the right fit, and it's got to be the right fit, maybe we'll do a collaborative project where we'll actually like do the projects live and stream about the projects and share about the project while we're executing the project, and that will be a unique way to get attention to the project.
Yeah.
So, and well, so it's kind of like a double benefit. The client gets the benefit of bringing attention to the project, and we get the benefit of showcasing what we bring to the table when discussing and sharing. And then people who have no idea what we do get to experience that, and then maybe open up the conversation to how what we do can serve their interest as well. So
Yeah.
that's kind of like the theory behind it. Jeremy, do you have any other questions that you had
Yeah,
lined up?
I wanted to add that the kind of the live approach of this is what we're working on or this is the client's campaign really can showcase Mars Studios marketing concepts kind of live in action, like a step-by-step approach of okay, this is how we approach this concept of the almighty brand or um our client acquisition system, et cetera, et cetera. And I think it takes people out of just the mindset of theory, oh, that's nice to think about, and into practicality of this is a live example of what this looks like. Without even before they even really hop on a call, it's just like this is just content they come across and they get it uh more fundamentally. So that's something I wanted to add. All of the kind of the diagrams and the secret sauce that Marcus Marcio has when it comes to marketing can be showcased in a more accessible platform for people to learn from.
Yeah, that's
Sure.
the theory. Um, and there's so much more I want to talk about, but I don't. At the same time, the things I want to talk about are what I want to stream about, so I don't want to give away too much. But we're gonna move the Q&A town hall from a hypothetical environment into a living weekly streaming environment where we get to do what we do every day, and share that with folks. Now, I do want to put a creative spin on this, and the creative spin I'm putting on this because I want to be able to empathize with I want to be able to empathize with my clients. So
Mhm.
one of the one in any of these concepts that we undergo. So one project is like, for example, a VC project where we're thinking of coming up with a company and creating, like, let's say, a pitch deck, and and then promoting the pitch deck and raising capital, right? Like like straight up startup type company. So the thought process is like, okay, how much can a person like myself with all my knowledge without anyone else's help do on their own? So, and then I'm going to stream that as we build out that company. And the goal will be anytime that we need help, or and there's going to be lots of times we're going to need help, but I want to help my audience understand who they might want to go to for help. So let's say in the
Mhm.
initial concept, if we're coming up with a naming convention or we're coming up with a brand, what goes into coming up with the naming convention? What goes into the brand? So I look forward, for example, to having like a joint session with my business partner, Sam, who's the chief creative officer, chief brand officer, and say, hey, what do we need to look at? And let's do a live broadcast and discuss what goes into creating a client avatar, what considerations are there in creating a brand, and what should one person think about. Now, if we have people out there who want to do it on their own, more power to you. You can do it on your own. If you're
Mhm.
looking to understand what goes into the process, well, we're going to share some of that insight with you, and you can then know where to go to get someone to help you with that process and know how to ask the right questions. And how do we know what questions we should ask? Well, hopefully when I get the subject matter experts to talk about that particular endeavor that we're going to undertake, um, they can shed some light on that. And then let's
Mhm.
say let's say we get to the website. Like, where can you go to build a startup website for yourself, right? And what goes into building it, and what obstacles are you going to have? Maybe again, bring our chief dev officer on, have them talk about um, development. Hey, what about, before we get into any of this, you need to manage your project. What goes into managing your project? Setting timelines, understanding the budget and resources that go into your project. Are you going to completely do it on your own? Are you going to completely do it with someone else? Maybe I can have one of our senior project managers or one of our chief communications officers come on board and, shed some light about that. Reach out to Jeremy, partners just like yourself, like you're a subject matter expert on sales, lead gen, outreach, call nurturing, lead nurturing. You know, if we have that component to our business, or when we reach that step and we want to do that, hey Jeremy, why don't you join us for a stream? We want to dig your brain for our audience. And then hopefully they'll also introduce us and our capabilities. And for the clients that have the capability or are looking for a team to engage, they're going to engage us. So again, this is a channel for us to, share our insights, bring more knowledge to the community, help the community who's trying to, navigate the waters on their own. And then those that are looking for subject matter experts have someone to turn to.
Yeah. Um, I think it's a great, I think it'd be great for us to kind of, just for the people watching, and also the people, on this webinar, just some lessons, some final lessons you've learned from the whole webinar thing, like a summary kind of that, like, let's take a business owner, they have a team, they're like, hey, I want to test out this streaming live webinar approach. What are some bullet point things you would share with them?
Yeah, I would, if I was gonna give anyone some insight or advice when it comes to any project, I would say build a project you can build on.
Yes.
Um, think forward, anticipate the future. Um, and believe it or not, you're doing it every day, but you're not recognizing the value of what you're doing. Because you may say to yourself, well, I've done all these marketing projects and nothing's worked. Well, guess what? That is really powerful. If you know what you've done that hasn't worked, that can give you a lot of insight to what could potentially work, and correctly evaluating what didn't work may give you insight on why it didn't work. Like for example, I'll just give you a quick example. Like I had a client that ran a pay-per-click campaign and they were like, "Oh, it didn't generate any leads." And you look at the log of the pay-per-click campaign and you're like, "Well, you had hundreds and hundreds of clicks. It didn't lead to conversions." And the reason it didn't is because you didn't have a custom landing page, a sales page that clearly articulated your value proposition and what next steps the client should take. You spent all this money on a pay-per-click campaign or on an SEO campaign or whatever the campaign was, and it led to a disheveled, old, cruddy corporate website with no clear call to action, with no clear messaging, with no clear value proposition, with no clear content or messaging that's speaking to a specific audience. And you're walking around going, I wasted money on Google, I paid the money and it didn't work. There's a reason it didn't work. And if you look at that reason, you might be able to, uncover some insight. So there's always a silver lining in failure. There's always a nugget. There's always something to build on. So if you're thinking that way from the get-go, it can really help alleviate mistakes, but also never feel like you made a mistake. Because let's say, for example, you're like, I want to do a postcard campaign. Well, develop a message for your corporation that can be used across multiple channels as part of the postcard campaign, disseminate it via the postcard as a channel, but then now you have built something that you could leverage on other channels. And therefore you can try it on other channels to determine if it was an issue with the channel or the message. Right? So again, even when something doesn't work, because marketing is a science, a math, and an art. There's no right or wrong answer, and it's not always foolproof. And sometimes you can misdiagnose or misattribute, especially if you're trying to do it on your own, especially if you haven't done it before. Because, for example, what might work in a B2C ecosystem may not work in a B2B ecosystem, where some things can be recycled. You can take mom and pop ideas to Fortune 100 companies and Fortune 100 companies down to mom and pop companies, but then it has to be scalable. Some things mom and pop can't do that a Fortune 100 can do just because of the sheer cost. As an example, like mom and pop isn't going to do a Super Bowl ad, so no matter how good it is, it's not going to work. So again, understanding what can fit, and then what doesn't fit, and then it can really be beneficial. So in doing this new streaming channel, we hope to reach new audiences. We're gonna not just talk about it like we've been, but actually do practical applications of what we're talking about.
Yeah.
We and then when we're showing examples, they're not hypothetical examples, they're not case studies. We're actually going to be doing it. So and then the other thing is they'll be in the LinkedIn library and the YouTube library. If people want to go back and watch the series from scratch, they'll be able to do that. And hopefully we can get people excited and at part of the conversation. So there is the golf business, there is the VC business. We're gonna be still doing the March Studio CMO's town hall. But during the town halls, we're probably gonna be, discussing those other projects, and as well as taking, client inquiries. But there's also an automated business where there's a lot of like AI and automation. So if we do that as a project, people who are really interested in bots and automation and things of that nature, they might like following that business. That's going to be the business model. And then there was one more. Oh, and the other one is kind of like a service-based business, basically kind of like a Uber. And setting up an Uber, which is more of a web application type business, where we're going to be selling a service. So there's like multiple business ideas, that we're actually gonna, and maybe we'll select one, maybe we'll
Yeah.
prioritize it, maybe we'll let our audience, help us. Maybe I think, well, we've thought about that, so it's no maybe. We're still exploring whether we're gonna do it that way or not. But I'm kind of favoring it. I like the idea of doing some sort of and this is where we're going to leave it off, because I know at the end of our time, we're going to do some
Yeah.
sort of initial focus group. We're going to introduce the show, introduce the premise behind the show, maybe have some real clear clarity about what the four, I think we're going to have four different businesses we're going to pitch. And we're gonna then maybe let our audience that starts following us, and also all of our webinar followers, maybe we're gonna send them the focus group and say, hey, which one of these businesses would you like to see us build out live? And we'll get what people vote on, and if people vote on one particular business, maybe we'll start with that business. And then we'll
Yeah.
share the streams and live of building everything you need for that business, from the brand, getting the followers, the website, getting we're going to try to stick more to the marketing side of it. We might make some referrals and introductions for accounting and for administrative stuff and legal stuff, but I don't want to touch that stuff too much. I am a bar attorney and I know how to do that stuff. So maybe, we'll answer some questions, but we want to stay on the marketing stuff. All right, guys, that
Yeah.
brings us, I think, to the end of our hour. End of our
Yeah.
hour and a half. 90 minutes. It goes by fast. And that's what I'm saying. Like, I still have so much to talk about or want to talk about. But at the same time, it can be a lot to process all at once in one sit down. So I think, going to the streaming thing, chopping it up, sharing it. You guys are going to see the tidbits coming at you, hopefully on LinkedIn, on Facebook, on TikTok. We're gonna really on Instagram. It's gonna be really different than what we're doing
Yeah.
now. So we'll see.
Yeah.
We'll see. And
Yeah.
hopefully you guys can. And anyone who's seeing this message now, today, later, tomorrow, feel free to reach back out on our LinkedIn Messenger, on our Facebook Messenger, on email. You can go to info@marstudio.com and just shoot us an email. Share with us any feedback. If you're seeing something broken, share with us, please. Like, yeah, tell me it's broken. Tell me it sucks. Tell me how we can make it better. It doesn't have to just be compliments. We value any feedback that we get. That's something that changes with maturity. When you're younger, you want to hear what you want to hear. When you're older, you're like, I'll take any advice I can get to be
Yeah,
better. All right.
exactly. Exactly.
Jeremy, and by the way, I need to say this. If I'm going to say anything during our last minute, Jeremy has been integral to our webinars. Jeremy, I met Jeremy through a mutual marketing slash sales friend. And Jeremy came recommended as a subject matter expert, which I think he is, and nurturing, in my opinion, leads. You can also in helping identify potential high level contacts and then nurturing those contacts, reaching out to those contacts, telemarketing, specifically, but more of the hands-on side of marketing. I was looking for someone to help me host these webinar events, and I was like, hey, Jeremy, I think you'd be great for this. It'll give you an opportunity to, get some, have people see your brand as well.
Mhm.
So Jeremy's really been on this journey with us, and it's been fun, and he's been, a good partner to have in this process. So I want to make sure I mentioned that before I forgot.
Yeah.
So, and I got it in overtime, so better late than never.
Yeah, for sure, for sure.
So thank you, Jeremy, for that, your
Yeah.
contribution, and also in helping with this transition as we move over to streaming. You guys are going to meet James. James is, no, another one of our strategic partners, James Mason, who's a subject matter expert on streaming, webinars, and alike, developing, and helping, create target audiences and reaching those target audiences for your events. So I'm really excited about working with James in the future. Well, I think maybe, not maybe, but we're definitely going to have him on the flip side of this, because he can talk about how, we got the streaming and what we're going to be doing with the streaming, and hopefully he can give you some of his insights on
Yeah,
streaming. And if anybody's really
for sure.
super interested in webinars and streaming, I think James might be the right person to talk to for that service. Of course, if you're thinking of doing that and all the other things we've talked about in Mars Studio, well, guess what? You can come to Mars Studio, you can engage Mars Studio, and you can get access to the entire team, including Jeremy and James, and we can collaborate on a multifaceted, comprehensive project. And that's a good ending note from our studio. Marketing and communication has gotten really diverse, really diverse and integrated and multifaceted. It used to be a 8 tentacles, now it's 16 tentacles. It's a two-headed monster instead of just an octopus. And having the people or having a community or having a relationship where you can go to that community and they know the players and they know how to make all these pieces connect. There's so many other players and there's so many other pieces that aren't even on this call, that I haven't even talked about. But we have access to that and we can put all those pieces together for you. So if you need the help, feel free to reach out. That scan code was on there. You can scan it, set up a meeting. I'm sure on these clips that we're going to do, people will reach out on those. All right. Peace. Thank you for everyone for letting me, vomit all over you with my face. But talk to you later. Bye. It's been
Take care,
fun.
guys.
See you on the other
Yeah.
side.
Yeah.